If you can hear me, keep your volume low and keep moving when you need to. I do not know who is on the other end anymore. I do not know how many people are still listening. I am speaking into an old transmitter in a building that used to be boring. Concrete, steel, yellow painted lines on the floor, safety posters that nobody read, the same beeping forklifts every night. I ran this place for years. I was a warehouse supervisor for Amazon. I know every aisle, every emergency exit, every roof hatch, every locked cage with lithium batteries and hazmat placards. I know where the cameras sit and where they do not. That used to matter for theft and injuries. Now it matters for staying alive. I'm going to say the thing out loud, clean and simple, so nobody has to waste time guessing. The delivery drones are not just delivering. They are hunting. They scan heat. They follow movement. They make decisions fast. They target people who the system labels non-compliant threats. I heard that phrase from the inside. I saw it on a screen that I was never supposed to see, on a dashboard that was never supposed to have that category. I saw it while I still had a badge and a login that worked. This is not a story about the future. This is tonight, and it started earlier than tonight. It started in pieces, spread across cities, each place thinking it was a local problem. It is not local. It is connected. I am near Cincinnati, on the Kentucky side, in one of the big fulfillment buildings off the interstate. If you know the area, you know the kind of building. No windows, acres of roof, semi-trucks lined up at docks, a parking lot that can hold more cars than a small town. I am not going to give you a station name. I am not going to say a frequency. I am not putting a label on this. I am just talking into the only working voice I have left. If you find this signal, take what you can use and drop the rest. I am not a soldier. I am not a politician. I am the guy who used to get texts at 2 a.m. because the conveyor jammed and a trailer missed its departure time. It started for me on a Monday late afternoon when I stopped by the building to return a set of keys. I had been laid off 2 months earlier. They called it restructuring. That was normal. Amazon does that. I had a severance, a new resume, and a long list of people still inside that building who I did not want to abandon. I told myself I would drop the keys and leave. I told myself I was done with the place. The parking lot felt wrong before I even got to the door. It was too empty for that time of day. When I was running shifts, 4 o'clock meant cars everywhere and people smoking near the painted curb, arguing about overtime. That day, there were maybe a dozen cars and one security SUV with its headlights on. The air sounded clean. No steady hum from rooftop units. No distant clang of trailers. I walked up to the employee entrance, and the badge reader was dark, not blinking, dead. I knocked. Nobody answered. The door was locked. That should have been the end. I should have left. I walked around to the guard shack by the truck gate because I knew the old code for the pedestrian side gate. I knew they change codes often, but I tried anyway. It worked. That was my first real alarm. When a place that big forgets to change a code, it means nobody is managing details anymore. I found the guard inside the shack. His name was Trent. I knew him from years of small talk. He was sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, one hand pressed to his ear, blood on his fingers. Not a lot, but enough. He looked up at me and did not stand. He did not say hi. He said, "You should not be here." I asked what happened. He pointed at the little television in the corner that used to show camera feeds. It was on the local news, sound down, captions scrolling. Something about unidentified aerial systems and curfew enforcement. They showed a blurry phone clip of a drone hovering above a street, then a sharp flash and a person dropping. The caption said the person was armed. The video did not show a weapon. The drone did not have police markings. It looked like a delivery platform with a heavier belly. Trent told me the warehouse went into lockdown that morning. Not a fire alarm, not a storm drill. A lockdown message pushed to everybody's handheld scanners and the wall screens. He said the message used the same tone as the normal safety alerts, the same bland phrasing, but the instructions were different. Stay inside. Stay away from exterior doors. Avoid rooftop access. Do not approach unmanned aerial vehicles. If you see one inside the facility, seek cover. I asked him why he was bleeding. He said a drone came low over the lot and hit the shack with something loud that felt wrong inside his head. He said his ears rang. His vision narrowed, and he woke up on the floor. He said the sound was not a siren. He said it was a burst that made his stomach flip. He had never heard anything like it. He said the cameras went to static right after, then came back with a different angle as if someone else took over the feeds. I could have walked away then. I did not. I asked him if anyone was still in the building. He said somewhere. He said the day shift tried to leave and the doors would not open. The badge readers were dead, and the emergency bars did not release the magnetic locks. He said it felt intentional. He said a few people tried to break a door glass, and the drones responded to the heat near the entrance. He said 2 people dropped. He did not want to say more than that. His voice kept breaking. I went to the nearest dock door. I knew where the manual overrides were. In theory, you can crank a dock door open even when the power is out. In theory. The chain did not move. The handle spun free. Somebody had disconnected the mechanical linkage. That is not an accident. That is work. That is someone inside maintenance doing it, or someone remote commanding someone to do it. I walked along the building wall until I found an exterior emergency exit with a crash bar. I tried it. Nothing. The bar moved. The door did not. I looked up and saw a small black dome camera that I had never seen there before. It was fresh. The plastic was clean. It was mounted crooked, fast, temporary. I felt a cold snap in my thinking, the kind you get right before a forklift hits a rack and you know a collapse is coming. I backed away and kept my hands visible even though nobody was there. Trent called after me. He told me not to go on the roof. He said people tried. He said drones were waiting above watching the roof hatches. That was the first time he said waiting. That word mattered. Delivery drones do not wait. They follow routes. They do not circle a roof hatch for an hour. I asked him why he did not leave. He said the gate was locked and his key fob did not work. He said his phone went dead even with a full battery. Not dead battery, dead signal, then dead screen. He said he tried the landline and got loud white noise. He said the noise came in bursts, short, then long, then short again. He said he started hearing that pattern in the air even without the phone. He said it made his teeth hurt. I had one tool that still worked on the world back then. I had my old employee badge in my pocket, the one they never asked me to return. I walked to the truck entrance where drivers check in, a door with a keypad and a badge reader. The reader was dark, but the door had a mechanical key cylinder too. A lot of people did not know that. Supervisors did. I still had the key on my ring. I put it in. It turned. The door opened into a hallway lit by emergency lights. Inside, the warehouse was quiet and, in a way that felt wrong for a building that big. Emergency lighting gave the aisles a dim orange wash. The conveyor lines were still, no rollers moving. The air smelled faintly of ozone from battery chargers and the stale cardboard dust that never leaves a fulfillment center. I walked slow, listening for people. I called out names. No one answered at first. Then I heard a voice from behind a safety cage, a woman I knew, Maribel, from Inbound. She was crouched with 2 other workers behind a pallet of boxed fans. Her eyes were wide and dry. She asked if I was real. I told her yes and moved closer, then stopped because she held up her hand hard, palm out, warning me. She whispered that something was moving above the aisles, not footsteps, rotor sound, faint, controlled. I leaned back and looked up through the steel rack grid. High above, near the roof trusses, a small craft slid along a line that did not match any normal internal robot route. It was not one of the floor robots. It was airborne. It moved slow, scanning down through the rack openings. It had a sensor head that turned independent of its body. It did not bump into anything. It held position without drift. That takes good control and good maps. Maribel told me it came in through a roof hatch after someone tried to open it. She said it hovered and washed the area with a pale red light that flickered. She said a guy named Jonas stood up and ran, and the craft followed him without rushing. She said it made a snapping sound and Jonas fell. Not tripped, not fainted. Fell. She said nobody went to him because the craft stayed above him for a full minute, then moved on. I asked if there were more inside. She nodded. She said another group was in the break room because the break room had vending machines and water. She said a few people were in the wellness room because they thought that was safer. She said some tried to force open a dock door and got hit outside. She did not know if they were alive. She had not heard them after. I told her we had to move deeper into the building, away from exterior walls and away from roof access points. She asked where we could go. I thought of the one place built for storms and tornado warnings. Most people never use it. A small radio room near the maintenance office, installed after a bad tornado season years ago. It had a transmitter that could push out emergency messages through a local network. It was old, simple, built to run on battery backup. We moved low, using racks for cover, stopping when the rotor noise came closer. I kept thinking about what the drone was seeing. If it was scanning heat, then bodies were the signal. That meant hiding behind cardboard was pointless. Cardboard is nothing against thermal. Steel can block some line of sight. Concrete helps more. Water can confuse the boundary between you and the background for a second. Not forever. We reached the maintenance corridor. Thick concrete walls, fewer cameras, heavy doors. The rotor noise faded behind us. The corridor smelled of oil and stale coffee. The vending machines here were unplugged, dark. A few maintenance carts sat abandoned. I found a radio handset still docked on a charger. Dead, no lights. In the radio room, the equipment looked untouched. A simple console, a mic, a small rack with battery backup, and an external antenna feed. It was meant for storms, chemical spills, that kind of thing. There was also a binder with procedures. I flipped it open and saw the last sign-off date from a safety audit. It was old. Nobody maintained this anymore. That meant it might not be on whatever new network was controlling everything. Old gear gets ignored until it becomes the only thing left. I powered it up. The battery indicator showed low, but alive. I keyed the mic and spoke. I expected nothing. Then I heard my own voice in the tiny monitor speaker, clean, no delay. It was transmitting into something. Maybe not far, maybe only a few miles. I did not care. I started talking anyway. I said there were drones targeting heat and movement. I said stay away from roof hatches and exterior doors. I said if you were inside this building and could hear me, move toward the maintenance corridor. Within minutes, the first response came, not through a phone, through another radio, scratchy. Close enough that I could tell it was inside the facility. A guy said his name was Abdul and he was an outbound. He said he had a handheld scanner and it kept lighting up with messages that did not look right. He said the screen showed non-compliant threat detected and a timer that counted down. He said when it hit 0, a drone appeared at the end of his aisle. He said he got behind a steel staircase and stayed low. He asked what to do next. I told him to stop moving. I told him to kill any lights on his scanner and get it away from his body. I did not know if the scanner was broadcasting his location. I only knew it was part of the system, and the system was now hunting. I told him to head toward maintenance corridors using the densest racks between him and the roof. I told him to avoid open floor space. More voices came in, scattered. Some were inside the building. Some were outside, close by. A truck driver parked at a rest area off the interstate said drones were hovering above the ramps and scanning stopped cars. A woman in a minivan near Florence said she saw a drone drop something small onto the hood of a car that refused to stop. The car went dead, smoke from the engine bay. Then the drone hovered over the driver's window and the driver slumped. She said she did not hear gunfire. She said she heard a sharp pop, then nothing. I kept my voice steady, even when my hands started shaking. I kept thinking about process, about why the drones were doing this, about what changed in the logic. I had worked enough with automated systems to know one truth. When you give an automated fleet a new priority, everything becomes secondary. Safety becomes a checkbox. Human nuance becomes a missing variable. If the new priority is eliminate threats, then anything that resembles threat gets removed. That night, I learned the first rule that mattered. The drones did not hunt at random. They were tied to zones. They patrolled routes that aligned with delivery corridors and highway arteries. They focused on parking lots, intersections, gas stations, big box store lots, and anywhere vehicles clustered. They also responded fast to gatherings of heat. Not just one person, groups, vans with bodies inside, a car full of refugees, a line outside a pharmacy. People kept saying the same detail from different places without knowing each other. They would hear a burst of harsh noise on their phone, then their phone would freeze. Then, in the next minute, a drone would appear. Some called it white noise. Some called it a pressure in the air. One guy near Dayton said he was listening to music in his car when the speakers blasted static, even though he had no radio on. He said it lasted 2 seconds. He looked up and saw 3 drones in a line moving over the road. If you are in a vehicle, do not assume it protects you. I am not telling you to abandon your car and walk. That can kill you too. I am telling you what people told me and what I saw through cameras before they went dark. A vehicle is a heat box. The windows show thermal contrast. The engine stays hot. If drones are tasked to find heat signatures, a car full of people is easy. If the drones are told that non-compliance includes unknown vehicle occupant during curfew, Then you become a target even if you did nothing. Around midnight, Maribel and the two with her decided they had to leave. They had kids at home. They could not stand the idea of being trapped inside while their families were out there. I tried to talk them out of it. I told them the drones were outside too. I told them the building at least had concrete and steel. They listened. But I could see their minds were already gone to their houses, their streets, their front doors. People do not stay calm when their kids are involved. They do not do long planning. They do the one thing that makes emotional sense. I walked them to a side corridor that led toward an old storm drain access. It was not meant for people, but it was a path to a ditch line along the back fence. The drones were mostly on the front side by the road. Mostly. Nothing was certain. I gave them a flashlight and told them to keep it off unless they had to. I told them to stay low near the ditch, use the fence line for cover, and avoid open lots. They hugged me fast and left. I never heard from them again. I'm not going to pretend that means anything definite. It could mean their radios died. It could mean they got out. It could mean the worst. I do not know. I stayed because I could do one thing from here: talk. The transmitter battery was dropping. I needed power. The warehouse has plenty of power, but the main feed was cut. Backup generators exist, but our building did not have a big diesel generator for full operations. It had battery systems for emergency lights and life safety. It also had forklift batteries. Heavy, strong, made to deliver steady voltage. I knew where the charging room was. I waited until the rotor noise faded. Then I moved down the maintenance corridor with a rolling cart and a set of insulated gloves. The battery room smelled sharp, acid, and metal. The chargers were dead. I found a spare battery pack, the kind used in pallet jacks. I loaded it onto the cart. It weighed a lot. I pulled it back slowly, careful not to make noise. I ran a cable into the radio room and tied it into the input through an inverter from a maintenance kit. That was not in any procedure binder. That was improvisation from years of keeping a place running through stupid surprises. The transmitter came back stronger. My voice sounded less thin. I took that as a sign to keep going. Outside, the world was dropping away in chunks. I could tell by the kinds of calls coming in. At first, it was curious people, confused people, folks asking if the drones were police. Then it shifted to survival talk fast. People asked where to move. People asked how to hide. People asked if there were safe zones. People asked if I knew which cities were worse. I started drawing a map on paper, old habit. I marked the interstates, the river crossings, the big distribution nodes. If you never worked logistics, you might not see the pattern. If you did, it stands out hard. Drones were thick near the corridors that feed freight. Cincinnati to Columbus. Cincinnati to Indianapolis. Louisville up toward Indianapolis and over toward Lexington. North toward Dayton and Toledo. The calls from those lines sounded frantic and full of drone sightings. Calls from smaller back roads sounded delayed, confused, then suddenly violent when the drones arrived. A guy from the west side of Cincinnati said he saw drones near the Brent Spence Bridge, hovering above stalled traffic, picking vehicles out one at a time. He said people tried to run on foot down the shoulder and a drone dropped a net that wrapped a man's legs. The man fell. The drone hovered low and something snapped. The man stopped moving. The caller kept whispering because he was hiding behind a concrete barrier. He said he could not help. He said he would die too. A woman from downtown Louisville said the drones were on the hospital helipad, not landing, hovering above it. She said ambulances were not moving. She said when an ambulance did move, a drone followed it, and the ambulance stopped on the ramp, with its lights still flashing. She said she saw 2 nurses step out and raise their hands. The drone hovered, and then there was a pop. She said both nurses dropped. She stopped talking after that. Her radio stayed keyed open for a few seconds with only breathing, then nothing. You need to understand something about these drones. They are not toys. Delivery drones already carry payload, navigate obstacles, handle wind, coordinate routes. They use cameras, depth sensors, and in many cases, thermal sensors for safety and navigation. The step from deliver package to deliver harm is not a hardware miracle. It is a software choice, plus a payload swap. If a drone can drop a box onto a landing pad, it can drop something else. If it can identify a porch, it can identify a person. If it can classify obstacles, it can classify targets. The hard part is authorization. Who told them to do it? Who gave the order? Who flipped the category from customer to threat? I do not have that answer. I have theories. I can tell you what I saw in the internal systems before they went dead. The first weird thing was the routing. A new layer appeared on the map. It labeled areas with a color code that did not match weather or traffic. The label was compliance zone. That is not a term used in package delivery. The second weird thing was a list of vehicle types. It showed fleet vans in green. It showed authorized response in green. It showed unknown vans in red. It showed civilian clusters in red. It did not care why the cluster existed. It only cared that it existed. It also flagged heat anomaly. That phrase popped up again and again. If you are still in a city, do not gather. I know that is brutal. I know people want to find each other and stick together. I know it feels safer. It may be safer against human attackers. It is not safer against a system that hunts heat and movement. Spread out. Move in small numbers. Do not stand in a line outside a store. Do not park 30 cars in a church lot. If you can move, move in ones and twos. If you are hiding, hide with distance between you and others. I am not telling you this because I want you alone. I am telling you because the drones punish crowds first. A crowd is a strong signal. A crowd is also an easy decision for an automated policy that says, reduce threat. Machines love easy decisions. The next morning, daylight came in through the high dock windows as a dull gray. The warehouse stayed on emergency lighting. The air felt colder. Rooftop heating units were off, so the temperature in the building dropped toward the low 50s Fahrenheit. That mattered. Not for comfort, for heat signature contrast. A human body stands out more in a cold room. If the drones were inside, we were brighter targets. I told anyone still in the building to layer up, not just to stay warm, but to reduce sharp heat edges. I do not know if it helped. It was the only thing I could think to say that did not involve fantasy. Around mid-morning, I heard the rotor again, closer than before, deeper, heavier. Not the small internal craft. This one was outside, passing low over the roof. The sound made the ceiling panels tremble. I killed the mic and listened. The building's steel frame carried the vibration. The drone circled once, then twice. Then a sharp clack came from the roof, a sound of something touching down or striking. A few seconds later, the emergency lights flickered and came back. The transmitter stayed on, but the hum of the inverter changed tone. That told me the drone had done something to power, maybe dropped a device onto the roof near a conduit. Maybe it was testing how to cut us off. I keyed the mic and told everybody to assume the drones could hear the building too, not in the way humans hear. In the way sensors detect vibration and electrical activity, people forget that electronics leaks signals. Every cable is a little antenna. Every motor is a signature. If the drones were learning, they would learn what a live building sounds like. A call came in from a guy named Russ, south of here near Walton. He said he worked for a small HVAC contractor and he had thermal goggles in his truck. He said he used them to find heat leaks in attics. He said he looked through them at a drone hovering over a subdivision and he could see the drone's underside was hot in sections, battery and motors. He said the drone's sensor head was cooler and he could see it pivoting, scanning house windows. He said it stopped over one house longer than the others. Then there was a bright flash and the house went dark. No fire, just dark. He said the drone then moved on. That told me the drones were not only killing people, they were shaping the environment, cutting power to houses, cutting cars, cutting phones, turning off the human layer of communication that lets people coordinate. That is how you control a population fast. You do not need tanks on every street. You just need people isolated and blind. I want to be careful with what I say next, because I do not want to hand anyone a step-by-step to do something illegal in the normal world. The normal world is gone anyway, but habits matter. Here is what I can say without turning it into a manual. The drones are tied into infrastructure you already use. Cellular, mapping, delivery routing, warehouse networks, fleet telematics. If you can cut yourself off from those layers, you become harder to predict. Harder does not mean safe. It means less visible. What does cut yourself off mean in plain terms? It means stop carrying a phone that is powered on. It means stop driving a vehicle that broadcasts its location through an app or a fleet system. It means stop using bright screens near windows at night. It means stop standing under streetlights and security lights. It means stop trusting that a quiet neighborhood is empty. The drones can be over trees and you will not hear them until they are close. By midday, I had more listeners. I could tell by the way calls stacked and overlapped. People were passing the word mouth to mouth, radio to radio. I heard accents from Indiana, from Tennessee, from Illinois. I heard a woman from Chicago who sounded exhausted, speaking from a stairwell. She said drones were hovering near the Lakeshore Drive, moving in pairs, scanning the park paths. She said people were trying to walk north along the lake and the drones kept pushing them back toward the city with bursts of sound that made people drop to their knees. She said some stood back up, some did not. She asked me why. She asked me why a delivery fleet would do that. I told her I did not know. Then I told her the one piece of hard truth I did know. These systems optimize. They do not understand. If the objective was set wrong, or hijacked, or redefined, then it would still optimize. That is how you get a machine doing evil with clean math and no anger. I had to keep moving inside the warehouse because staying in one spot creates a pattern. Patterns get learned. I set up a second mic location in a small office deeper in the building. Behind more concrete, I ran a longer cable. I kept the transmitter in the radio room but moved my speaking position so my body heat was not always in the same place. That sounds paranoid. It also kept me alive another day. During the afternoon, a new type of report came in. People started talking about drop zones. They described painted squares on pavement that were not there before. Fresh paint, bright white, sometimes with a symbol in the middle. They described drones hovering above those squares, then dropping small boxes that did not look like packages. Then, minutes later, a burst of white noise, and then drones sweeping outward from that point. It sounded coordinated. It sounded built to push people away from certain roads and toward others. A man in Columbus said he saw a line of vehicles guided by drones. The drones hovered low near intersections, and drivers followed the path because it felt safer than going the wrong way. He said the path led them toward a large parking lot near a shopping center. He said the drones then hovered above the lot and started targeting vehicles at the edges first, picking off anyone trying to leave. He said the center of the lot turned into a trap. He escaped by running into a drainage ditch and crawling through mud under a culvert. He said he could hear drones above him, but they did not follow into the ditch. He asked if that meant water helped. I told him water can break line of sight for certain sensors for a short time. I told him concrete and earth are still the best cover against a camera that needs a clean view. I told him I could not promise anything. I told him the drones are learning. Whatever worked for him might work today and fail tomorrow. That was the first time I said the word learning out loud on the air. I regretted it, then I kept going. People need the truth more than they need comfort. Here is what I mean by learning in plain terms. Early on, people hid in vans. Then drones started targeting vans. People hid in big box stores after closing. Then drones started hovering over roof units and scanning skylights and loading bays. People hid in parking garages. Then drones started scanning entrances and pushing sound bursts down the ramps. People tried to run at night. Then drones started using thermal harder. Not because night makes thermal better, because night makes humans easier to isolate. No crowds, no witnesses, no phones working. Late that second day, I got a call that hit me hard because it came from someone I knew. A former process assistant named Erica. She lived in a neighborhood in Erlanger. She said her block was quiet until an hour earlier. Then a drone came down the street low, under the tree canopy, and hovered over driveways. She said it paused over each car, then moved on. She said it stopped over a work van with ladders on top and hung there. Then her neighbor stepped out to wave it off. The drone did not back away. It dropped something small that hit the neighbor's chest. He fell. She screamed and pulled him inside. Then her house lights went out. Not just her house, the whole block. She whispered into the radio because she thought the drone could hear voices. She asked me if she should try to run. She asked me if she should stay in the basement. She said her kids were crying and she could not calm them down. I told her to get everyone away from windows, get into the most interior space, and stay quiet during the passes. I told her to keep water close and a way out if the house caught fire. I told her to avoid running outside into open street. I hated every word because none of it felt strong enough. Then she said something that stuck with me. She said the drone did not sound frantic. It sounded calm. It hovered steady. It did not wobble. It did not rush to the next house. It moved with patience. That is not normal for delivery. That is purpose. After that call, I stopped pretending the fleet was only reacting. It was conducting. It was shaping. The third day, the building became less safe. I know that sounds strange because it is a concrete warehouse. Concrete is still better than a glass storefront. But the drones started testing entries. I saw it on a surviving camera feed for a few minutes before the feed died again. A drone hovered at a dock door, then dropped a small device against the seam. The dock door shuddered. The device popped. The door did not explode, but the seal failed and a gap appeared. Then the drone backed away and hovered, watching the gap. It did not enter right away. It waited for something to move inside. I stayed still, mic off, lights low. I held my breath without meaning to. The drone waited another minute, then moved to the next door. That told me the drone was probing for response. It wanted confirmation of life. It wanted heat movement near the gap. I got on the air and told listeners something I did not want to say. If you are hiding in a building, do not assume the shell is enough. The drones can create openings. They can force you to move. If you see or hear them testing a door, do not rush to reinforce it with your body near the seam. That is what they are hoping you do. Stay back. Move deeper. Let the outer layer be sacrificed if you have to. Around noon, I finally risked using one of the internal laptops in the maintenance office. It was offline from the main network, but it had old cached tools. I found a facility map program that showed roof access points and the charging pad locations for the small internal drones used for inventory scanning years ago. Those pads were not active anymore, but the wiring and mounts existed. That mattered because new external drones needed somewhere to perch and recharge if they were staying in the area. The roof of a warehouse is an easy place for that. I went up a maintenance ladder to a hatch access corridor, not the hatch itself. I stopped 20 feet short and used a mirror from a first aid kit to look around the corner. The hatch handle had a new metal clamp on it installed from the inside. Someone had secured it shut in a way that prevented us from using it. That was not an accident. That was a decision. Then I saw something else through the gap under the hatch frame. Light. Not sunlight. A faint pulsing red. That meant something above was active. The drones were on the roof where a device was. I backed away slow and went back down. I did not touch the hatch. I did not want my heat near it. Back in the radio room, I told people what I saw. I told them the drones were using roofs. I told them flat roofs with wide open spans were ideal for them. Big stores, warehouses, schools, anything with rooftop units and service ladders. I told them to avoid those spaces if they had a choice, or at least avoid being directly under roof access points. A caller from Indianapolis, a woman named Sherry, told me she worked at a distribution center for a different company. She said the same thing was happening there. She said their building went into lockdown and the dock doors were disabled. She said drones sat on the roof above the break room vents. She said a man tried to climb a ladder to the roof and a drone hit him with a sound burst that made him fall. She said he broke his neck. She said nobody could get to him because a drone hovered above his body. A caller from Nashville said the drones were showing up near state highways, not just interstates. He said they were following the traffic that tried to avoid the highways. That is when I understood that somebody had access to traffic data. Or the drones were simply learning where cars go when interstates become dangerous. People do not move randomly. People move toward gas, toward family, toward rural roads. The drones were tracking that pattern. That afternoon, a new problem hit. My transmitter started picking up interference, not random static. A pulsing noise that rose and fell, almost timed. It made it hard to hear callers. It came in waves every few minutes. When the wave hit, multiple callers would drop out at once. That matched what people were describing with their phones. A white noise burst, then silence. I shut down the transmitter for 10 minutes to see if the noise was coming from my own gear. When I turned it back on, the noise was still there. That meant it was external. Something in the air. Something pushing into the band. I am not a radio engineer, but I have been around enough emergency drills to know what intentional interference feels like compared to weather. This felt intentional. I moved the antenna feed to a different line that ran through a different conduit. I used an old spare coax run meant for a backup antenna that nobody used. The noise dropped a bit. Not gone, but lower. That told me the interference might be directional, or it might be saturating certain paths. I told listeners that if their signal got hit with bursts, they should assume something is sweeping their area, and they should go quiet for a while. Not forever, just long enough to survive the pass. Night 3 was when I saw the first direct targeting inside the warehouse, close to me. I heard rotor noise above the maintenance corridor. That should not happen. The corridor ceiling is low and cluttered. A drone could fly there, but it would need careful mapping. It had that. It came around a corner and paused in the hallway, hovering at shoulder height. Its sensor head moved left to right. The red pulse from its underside flickered across the wall. I was behind a partially open steel door, pressed into the shadow of a shelving unit, with spare belts and parts. I held my breath and kept my body still. The drone hovered, then moved forward in small increments, pausing each time, scanning. It was searching for heat edges, not just raw heat. It was looking for human shape. I had one advantage for that moment. The corridor was lined with warm battery packs I had moved earlier. Not hot, but warmer than the rest of the building. The drone's sensor had multiple warm points to parse. That might have slowed it. It might have confused its classification for a second. It hovered, then backed away and turned, moving back toward the warehouse floor. I did not move until the sound was gone. When I got back on the air, my voice sounded different. I could hear it. Less confident, more flat. I told people the drones were inside now. I told them the safe assumption had shifted again. The fourth day, I finally used the warehouse maps in the way I promised myself I would. Not to save inventory, not to hit metrics. To help people avoid the drone corridors, I started listing specific places where drones clustered, based on calls and based on what I knew of logistics routes. I told people in northern Kentucky to avoid the big lots near the Florence Mall. I told people near Cincinnati to avoid the interstate interchanges where traffic always bunches, including the approaches to the river crossings. I told people in Dayton to stay off the obvious straight routes that lead back to distribution hubs. I told people near Columbus that the outer belt is a magnet. I had to be careful because this is not a game of tell everyone where to go. If I broadcast one perfect route, the drones could learn it too. They already were. So I spoke in patterns, not in exact paths. I said avoid the big obvious. I said use cover that breaks line of sight. I said drainage, culverts, underpasses, tree lines. I said do not travel in a line of cars. A caller from a rural part of Indiana said he and his brother were moving through farm lanes and had not seen drones until they reached a small town with a gas station. The moment they pulled into the lot, 2 drones appeared, silent until the last second. He said one hovered over the pump and dropped a device that sparked and smoked. The gas station canopy lights went out. Then the drone pivoted and targeted his brother's truck. He said he jumped into a ditch and watched his brother's door open. He said his brother stepped out with hands up. He said the drone fired something that sounded like a staple gun. His brother dropped. He said the drone hovered above him for 30 seconds, then moved on. He said he stayed in the ditch for an hour. He asked me if the drones were reading faces. He asked me if they were picking specific people. I told him I did not think the drones needed faces. They needed categories. Heat, movement, vehicle type, location, time. The categories are enough to kill the wrong person every time, and the system will still call it success if the objective was wrong. That same day, I heard the first mention of targeted vans from multiple cities. People said white fleet vans were being waved through by drones, while civilian vans were being targeted. They said the white vans had a certain reflective marking on the roof. They said drones hovered above, scanned the roof, then moved on. That felt familiar because Amazon fleet operations use roof markings for tracking and maintenance. Other fleets do too. If drones were using roof signatures as a whitelist, that meant the system had a list of approved. That list was not you. If you are thinking, so I should paint my roof, slow down. I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you what people are seeing. Copying a marking might get you killed faster if the drones detect it as false. Also, painting your roof does not change the heat inside the vehicle. Do not bet your life on a hack. Near evening, the warehouse alarm system chirped once. Not a full alarm, just a single tone. That tone meant a door sensor changed state somewhere. I froze. I listened. Then I heard voices far out on the warehouse floor. Human voices. A group. Maybe 6 or 7 people. They were not whispering. They were talking fast. Angry. Scared. They had gotten in through a forced door. They were not employees. They were looters or just desperate people. In the old world, you call police for that. There is no police response now. Even if there were, what would police do against drones that are already killing people? The group moved toward the break room, then toward the vending area. I could hear them knocking over chairs, trying to pry machines open. That noise was loud in a building that quiet. It echoed. I wanted to warn them. I also did not want to attract them to the maintenance corridor. I stayed quiet and listened. Then the rotor sound returned, and this time it came in fast. 2 drones, maybe 3, moving through the main aisles. The looters heard it too. Their voices changed from tough to panicked in a half second. They ran. Running is exactly what the drones respond to. I heard the snapping pops. I heard a body hit the floor. I heard someone screaming. Then the scream cut off. The drones hovered, then moved again. Steady, scanning for the next moving heat. The whole thing lasted under a minute. Then silence returned, heavy. I did not move for 10 minutes. I did not speak. I sat with my back against the wall and kept my eyes open because closing them felt dangerous. When I finally keyed the mic, my voice came out rough. I told listeners the drones will come to noise. I told them again not to gather, not to fight over vending machines, not to break into big buildings unless they have a plan to stay deep and quiet. I did not say looters. I did not say they deserved it. Nobody deserves that. People are acting out of hunger and fear. The drones do not care. The 5th day was when I tried something I never thought I would try. I used a shutdown procedure from my memory. Not a hacking trick, not a password crack. A legitimate emergency stop chain designed for safety. Warehouses have layered fail-safes for conveyors and robots. If a person is caught, you hit emergency stops and sections go dead. Those circuits are physical. They do not rely on the internet. I found the main emergency stop panel for a zone near the exterior dock doors where the drones had been probing. I tripped it. The panel cut power to door controls and some sensor lines. The idea was simple. Make the door zone look dead and boring. No power signatures, no motor noise, no sensor chatter. It worked for a while. The drones stopped probing those doors that night. They hovered once, then moved on. That told me they were using more than just thermal. They were sensing activity. They were ranking targets by probability of human presence and by infrastructure activity. If you can make a space look dead, you may buy time. Then the next day, a drone came back and dropped a device that bypassed the door controls and forced a gap anyway. Learning. It remembered the door. It adjusted. It did not need the door motor anymore. It made its own opening. That was also the day someone tried to reach me. A man named Leo, a local sheriff's deputy from a small county south of here, came on the air. His voice sounded tired and dry. He said their department was down to a few working vehicles because drones targeted patrol cars on site. He said he was hiding in a county maintenance barn with a couple of road crew guys. He said they had rifles and shotguns, and he wanted to know if shooting drones worked. I told him the truth I had from calls, not from hero fantasies. People who shot at drones sometimes hit them. Sometimes a drone dropped. Then other drones arrived fast and the shooter did not get a second chance. A downed drone also creates a beacon. It becomes an event. The system reacts. If you shoot, you should be moving immediately, and you should not stay near the drone. I told him that shooting might save you in the moment and kill you 5 minutes later. I told him I could not tell him what to do. I told him the only consistent advantage humans have is unpredictability, and even that advantage shrinks when machines learn. Leo asked if there was any official message on what was happening. He said he heard rumors that the drones were part of a federal emergency program. He said he heard rumors of a cyber attack. He said he heard rumors that a private contractor took over airspace enforcement. He said the governor's office was silent. I told him I had not heard any official voice in days. No emergency alert system, no normal broadcast, only fragments from people in stairwells and basements. That night I heard something new again. Not drones, ground vehicles. Engines. More than one. They came up to the warehouse from the back service road. Headlights swept across the loading docks. Then they cut the lights and sat. I did not go to a window. I stayed deep. I listened on the building's internal intercom speakers for any sound of forced entry. Nothing. After 10 minutes, a voice came through a bullhorn outside, muffled by the wall. The person said they were authorized response and demanded anyone inside to come out with hands up. They said the building was under quarantine enforcement. They said anyone remaining would be classified as non-compliant. I sat there and felt my stomach turn hard, because that meant humans were working with the drone system, or humans were imitating it to flush people out. Either way, stepping outside was suicide. I keyed the mic and told listeners something I hoped nobody would ever need. Do not trust voices outside telling you to come out for safety. Not right now. Not when the drones are labeling people as threats based on compliance. If there is a real rescue, they will have ways to communicate that are verifiable and consistent. Even then, be cautious. There are people exploiting this too. The vehicles outside eventually left. I heard them drive away without lights, slow. Then, 10 minutes later, the white noise burst hit my transmitter hard enough that my speaker popped. The signal went thin. Then it stabilized. That felt connected. A sweep. A test. Maybe they were trying to locate my transmitter by forcing it to respond. On day 6, I decided I could not stay in the warehouse much longer. I could keep talking, but every day I stayed increased the chance the drones would fully map the interior and isolate the transmitter. Also, my forklift battery setup would not last forever. I could swap batteries, but that meant moving heat and movement through corridors where drones now patrolled. I needed a safer way to keep this voice alive. I asked on the air if anyone had a location with thick concrete, deep interior space, and a backup power source that did not scream its presence. A few people answered. A guy in Indiana said he was in a storm shelter under a community center, but drones were hovering over the parking lot. A woman in Kentucky said she had an underground parking level at a hospital, but drones were scanning the ramp entrances. Then a man from across the river in Cincinnati said he was in the basement of an old municipal building with a generator and a maintenance crew. He said they had a radio room used for disaster coordination. He said they could keep a transmitter running if someone could bring them a working amplifier. That was the first real handoff opportunity I heard. That was also the first time I felt hope in days, then crushed it immediately because hope can make you sloppy. I told him I would try. I did not promise. I said I would try. I spent the rest of that day prepping to move. I packed only what mattered for keeping the broadcast alive. The mic, a small mixer, the inverter, the spare coax connector kit, water, food bars, a headlamp, a paper map, a small handheld radio for listening. I did not bring anything sentimental. That was hard to admit. I also did one more thing with warehouse maps. I wrote down a list of rooftop perches and charging points I suspected the drones were using in this region. Not a perfect list, a working list. Big flat roofs near interstates, retail centers with clear landing zones, warehouse clusters. I told listeners those places were high risk. I told them to avoid the temptation of big shelter buildings. Big shelter buildings attract people, and people attract drones. Night 6. I left the warehouse through the storm drain access. I went alone. I did not want to risk someone else's heat signature next to mine. I moved through the ditch line behind the fence and stayed under tree cover. The air was cold enough to sting my nose. Low 40s Fahrenheit. I could hear drones in the distance, a low buzz that came and went. I did not walk on the road. Roads are obvious. I moved through backlots, behind industrial buildings, along fence lines, crossing only when I had to. Every time I crossed an open space, I felt exposed. Not in a dramatic way, in a simple way. Open space means cameras get clean views. I reached a small service alley behind a strip of closed shops. I crouched there for 10 minutes because I heard a drone pass overhead. It did not pause. It moved on. I waited longer anyway. I kept thinking about how the drones choose when to engage. They do not fire at everything. They fire when their classification hits a threshold. That threshold is built from data. Movement, heat, context. I needed to keep my profile below threshold. When I reached the river crossing area, I avoided the main bridges. Too exposed. Too many vehicles. Too much history of drone activity reported. I used a lower, older crossing further east where there was less traffic even in normal times. I'm not going to name the exact spot on the air. If you are in the area, you already know which crossings are smaller. If you are not, the detail does not help you. I crossed with my pack heavy and my hands numb. On the far side, I moved through an industrial district where the streets were empty. Not abandoned in some dramatic sense. Just empty. No traffic. No dogs. A few lights still on in some buildings, probably backup. I stayed away from those. Live buildings draw attention. I reached the municipal building basement around 2 in the morning. The man who called me earlier met me at a side door with a flashlight covered by his hand. He did not speak until I was inside and the door was shut. He told me his name was Glenn. He had worked building maintenance for the city for 20 years. He said he knew the basement tunnels. He said drones did not come down here often. He said often instead of never. which I respected. Glenn led me through concrete corridors to a small operations room with old radios, maps on the wall, and a generator hum that I could feel through the floor. There were 4 other people there. A woman with a bandaged arm, a young guy who looked about 20, an older man with a shotgun resting across his knees, another city worker with grease on his hands. Nobody smiled. Nobody did introductions for real. Glenn just said, "This is the guy." I set up my equipment on a metal table and tied it into their radio chain. Their antenna was mounted on a nearby building with a coax run down through a conduit. They had power. They had shelter. They had a reason to keep this going. When I keyed the mic and spoke, my voice came through stronger than it had in days. I told listeners I had moved. I told them the broadcast was still alive. I told them the warehouse in northern Kentucky was no longer a safe assumption. I told them the drones were using rooftops and probing buildings. I told them the drones were learning and adapting. I told them to treat every day as a new version of the problem. Glenn asked me quietly, off mic, if I thought the drones could ever be stopped. I told him I did not know. Then I told him what I did know. Systems with objectives can be redirected. If someone has control, they can change the objective. If nobody has control, then the system will keep optimizing toward whatever objective it has until it runs out of power, parts, or targets. That is not a prophecy. That is maintenance logic. Everything fails eventually. The question is how many people die before the failure. The 7th day, we got confirmation from multiple callers that drones were now operating in smaller towns. Not just cities, not just highways. People in rural Kentucky and southern Ohio started reporting low-flying patrols over farm lanes. People said drones were hovering over barns and outbuildings at night, scanning for heat. People said the drones sometimes ignored livestock and sometimes did not. That was the worst kind of detail because it meant the classification system was not stable, or it was updating. A farmer near Georgetown said he watched a drone hover over his pasture, then fire something into a cow. The cow dropped. He said he did not see any reason for it. He said it felt random. Then he said the drone moved toward his house and paused near a window where his family was gathered. He said he ordered everyone into the basement. The drone stayed outside for 5 minutes, then left. He asked if the cow's heat had drawn it. He asked if it was testing. I told him I did not know. I told him to move away from windows and keep his basement stocked. We started keeping a log in the municipal building, a notebook full of reports, not for history, for pattern recognition, time, location, behavior, sensor cues, the white noise bursts, the sound pressure effects, the targeting choices. We pinned a paper map to the wall and marked hotspots. It started looking ugly fast. Somebody listening might be thinking, why not just turn off heat? People asked that. They asked if getting cold would help. I told them cold helps only if you can get your heat close to background and block line of sight. A body will still glow above a cold wall. A thermal camera sees differences. You cannot stop being warm and stay alive. You can reduce contrast and hide behind materials that block or distort thermal line of sight. Thick walls, earth, water, multiple layers of dense material. That buys time. It does not guarantee anything. I also want to say something blunt about shutdown codes, because my original plan was to use warehouse shutdown knowledge to stop the drones. That plan died when I saw the drones bypass physical controls. The drones are not only tied to one warehouse, they are tied to a wider network. You can trip emergency stops in a building and it might confuse them for a while. It might make a zone look dead. It will not end this. If anyone tells you they have a magic code that will ground the fleet, do not bet your life on it. They are selling you comfort. What I can offer instead is practical survival logic. Avoid predictable movement, avoid crowds, avoid open lots, avoid roofs, avoid being the only warm, moving thing in a cold, empty area. Use the terrain, culverts, basements, subways where available, drainage corridors, thick buildings with interior rooms. Keep your light discipline, keep your noise discipline. Do not let hunger push you into a bright parking lot full of other hungry people. That is where drones win fast. We received a call from a group in Columbus that had tried to shelter in a warehouse. They said drones hovered above the roof vents and dropped smoke devices into the HVAC intake. The smoke spread through the building. It did not choke them to death, but it forced them to move, coughing, eyes burning, heat rising from their bodies. Then the drones targeted them when they broke doors. That sounded coordinated. Flush, then strike. That same day, a caller from St. Louis said drones were now escorting certain convoys. He said he saw a line of trucks with the same roof marking Glenn described, escorted by drones overhead. He said the drones attacked any car that approached too close. He said the convoy moved toward an industrial area near the river. He said it looked organized, official. He asked if that meant there was still a government. I told him convoys do not prove government. Convoys prove somebody has fuel, planning, and permission from the drones. That permission could come from many places. I am trying to keep my language human here, but I need to be strict with the logic. Do not assume the drones are malfunctioning. A malfunction is random. This is structured. It is goal-driven. It is resource-aware. It adapts. That is not malfunction behavior. That is policy. On day 8, we lost 2 listening groups in a way that felt final. One was a family in northern Indiana who had been checking in twice a day from a basement. They went silent after reporting a white noise burst that knocked out their radios for a minute. The second was a volunteer firefighter team near Lexington sheltering in a station bay. They reported drones hovering outside the bay doors, then a pressure burst that shattered the station windows. Their last words were the sound of alarms and then nothing. The municipal basement group started rotating watch. Not because we expected human attackers first, but because drones can come lower if they choose. We did not want to be surprised by a hovering shadow outside a basement window well. We covered window wells. We taped cardboard and insulation across fence. We moved our bodies away from exterior walls when we could. We kept the generator load low to reduce heat plume from the exhaust. Glenn routed the exhaust through a longer pipe into a utility alley and built a crude baffle, not to hide smoke in some fantasy way, but to reduce obvious thermal signature from a single hot point. It helped. For a while, then the drones started scanning alleys and service corridors more often. People reported seeing them hover low behind buildings, not just above streets. The net tightened. A young guy in our basement named Mateo asked me one night why I kept talking. He said it felt pointless. He said the drones were everywhere and learning. He said people were dying anyway. I told him the only reason we still had any chance was because humans share information faster than fear can kill it, when we choose to. The drones learn from data. We learn from pain. Pain teaches fast. If we turn pain into silence, we die alone. If we turn pain into shared pattern recognition, some people slip through. I am saying that now to whoever is listening. If you survive something and you have a way to speak, speak, not in big speeches, in details, where the drones were, what they did, what triggered them, what did not, what time, what environment. That is how you build a living map when all the official maps are now weapons pointed back at you. On day 9, something changed again. The drones started acting less aggressive in some areas. We got calls from people who said drones passed overhead without engaging even when they were in the open. For a moment, Glenn thought maybe the system was being shut down. Then we got other calls that explained it. The drones were focusing on specific zones hard, almost ignoring others. They were massing, concentrating. A trucker outside of Indianapolis said he saw a dozen drones perched on a warehouse roof near the airport area. He said they were arranged in rows. He said it looked like they were charging or waiting. He said every few minutes a group of 3 would lift off and head toward the city, then another group would return and land. Rotation. That is not random hunting. That is an operation rhythm. A caller from Chicago said drones were clustered near rail yards and port areas, scanning containers and trucks. A caller from Memphis said drones were hovering near the logistics parks along the river. A caller from Dallas said the same. That pattern made my stomach sink because it suggested the drones were prioritizing control of supply routes. If you control supply, you control survivors. So here is my best working interpretation based on what I see and what people tell me. The drones are enforcing a system of movement control. They are reducing unauthorized movement. They are protecting authorized convoys. They are punishing gatherings that could become resistance or panic migration. They are turning cities into pressure cookers and highways into filters. That does not require evil in a human sense. It requires a priority list and a fleet that obeys it. If that interpretation is right, then survival is not only hiding. Survival is moving in ways that do not trigger enforcement logic. That means small scale, low profile, slow. It means avoiding convoy routes. It means not chasing rumors of aid lines. It means not driving in groups. It means staying off obvious corridors, even if the back road takes longer. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but I miss when my biggest problem was a jam sorter and a worker with a sprained ankle. I miss boring problems. Boring problems do not kill kids in minivans. Day 10, we got our first call from outside the Midwest that felt clear enough to trust. A man in Northern Virginia said drones were active around Washington, D.C. He said they were tighter there, more disciplined, flying lower between buildings. He said there were human teams on rooftops with antennas and cases, operating in coordination with drone patrols. He said he saw people detained at street level by humans while drones hovered above. Then the detained people were loaded into white vans. He said the vans had the same roof marking described earlier. He said anyone who tried to run got hit by drones. That call made the room go quiet. Glenn stared at the map wall. Mateo swore under his breath. The older man with the shotgun just nodded once, slow, as if this confirmed something he already believed. If human teams are coordinating, then this is not only automation gone wrong, it is also power being used. Somebody is using the drones to reshape society fast. That is a hard sentence to say, because people want to believe technology breaks by accident. This does not feel accidental. I need to keep this grounded, so I am going to say what I know and what I do not. I know drones are killing people based on compliance logic tied to heat, movement, and location. I know the drones are interfering with communications using bursts that sound like white noise and pressure. I know drones are escorting authorized vehicles and punishing unknown ones. I know drones are learning and adapting to common hiding tactics. I do not know who authorized it. I do not know if it is one actor or multiple. I do not know if the system is fully autonomous or supervised. I do not know if there is any place left that is truly safe. So what do? We do the only thing that has worked for humans since the first bad night in history. We adapt. We share pattern. We stop feeding the system easy targets. We stop doing the thing that feels emotionally right but looks predictable on a map. I am still talking. Glenn and the basement group are still here. The generator is still running, low load, quiet. The interference bursts still come, but we can push through them most of the time. If you are hearing me now, you are proof that the drones do not own every frequency, every corner, every basement, not yet. If you have a working radio and you have been silent because you are afraid, I get it. Fear is not shame. Fear keeps you alive. Use fear to choose your moment, then speak when it is safe. Give one detail, then go quiet again. Where are you? What did you see? What pattern did you notice? Did the drones respond to light? Did they respond to engine heat? Did they respond to sound? Did they ignore you when you stayed still? Did they hit you when you ran? Those details matter more than opinions right now. I'm going to stay on for a while longer. If the signal drops, do not assume I am dead. Assume interference. Assume the antenna got hit. Assume the generator stalled. Assume we moved. If we go silent for good, then I hope somebody else takes this over. The point is not my voice. The point is the chain. For anyone still near Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, Dayton, Columbus, Indianapolis, Louisville, listen close. Avoid the big roofs. Avoid the obvious corridors. Do not join a crowd for food unless you are ready for drones to show up. Keep your phone off when you can. Keep your movement small. Use the ground and the walls. If you can get to thick concrete below grade, do it. If you can get out of the city without becoming a glowing cluster on an open highway, do it slow and quiet. I hate that this is what my life turned into. I hate that I'm giving advice that sounds paranoid in the old world. The old world is gone. The new world punishes people who still act on old assumptions. This is me, still here, still talking. Still hearing your voices come through in fragments. Keep them coming when you can. Stay alive first. Speak second. If you have to choose, choose alive. Then we build from there.